and welcome to episode 32 of There's Still Time, the AFTN podcast. I'm Michael McCall.
I'm Steve Pender.
I'm Stephen Lamothe.
And we're here to do part one of our end of season review and wrap up. Now we're going to be joined by Zach Meisenheimer later on. At the moment we've got him standing in the corner with a Dunces hat on because of his sweetie rustling the last time. So if he promises to get through this one without rustling anything, we'll have him in for part two.
So before we get started on reviewing the end, we should we've already discussed Carl Robinson in our last podcast. Steve, as a supporter, what is your thoughts on the appointment of Carl Robinson?
I like the appointment. I think what we're going to see is a bit of what we saw in Portland last year. People who know me know I don't think much of Portland's actual squad, and I think they way overperformed based on a coach that they loved playing for. I think that's all that can be successful over the course of a year, and I think that's what will happen with Robinson. So the big thing will be in the second year what changes they make. But overall, I love it myself.
Have you been a little bit surprised with the reaction he's got? The media seem to love the appointment.
Yeah.
A lot of the hardcore fans, like if you go to the Southsiders forum and read Twitter, they seem quite happy by it. But there was quite a lot of negative comments on the Whitecaps Facebook page. Your average fan, your casual fan, they don't seem to understand the sign.
I call them Canuck fans.
That's a bit harsh. A lot of them are going to be genuine football fans, but maybe just don't follow the team as closely as us and people listening to this.
Yeah.
But they seem to have lost them.
Yeah, I think that was because of the whole 4th, 5th pick thing, which I think was never the case in my opinion. I think Carl Robinson was always a guy they wanted to maintain on the staff, whether that was as head coach or not. So he was always in play. So to me, he was always the 1A. No matter who was one, whether it was Yallop at the start or Bradley or Kreis, Robinson was always the choice second to that, right? And as he was aware of that, as he said in his press conference. So to me, it's not an issue, right? He felt honored to be a part of that conversation, and to me, he's right. So
I also think that one of the things that was negative about it was people associate Carl Robinson with the Martin Rennie regime, saying that he was one of Martin Rennie's assistants.
Yeah.
In actuality, when Carl Robinson was brought in, he had no association with Martin Rennie initially. They brought him in as an MLS experienced type of guy, the guy that's played in the MLS, knows the MLS a little bit, to help out Martin Rennie with that. So I think people are misconstrued the idea that he's one of Martin Rennie's guys.
Yeah, no, the first time I saw him when they were having their spring or fall camp, I guess, whatever it is, the spring camp when Robinson first joined the squad and went to Burnaby Lake, my initial reaction, which I find more surprising than anything, was that he was a former TFC guy. That was my issue, right? It's like, look at Robinson wearing Whitecap stuff. It's terrible.
And two-time Toronto FC MVP as well in his first 2 years there.
To me, but it's been about, so it was a good transition. 2 years as an assistant coach, get to see him in Whitecap gear for a couple of years, because, for me, but he was never Rennie's man as far as that went, as far as I was concerned.
No, I think Paul Ritchie's probably the guy that's more associated with Rennie. So it's going to be interesting if they bring Paul back or whether they just try and bring in a whole new team. I mean, maybe even Marius Rofta won't come back. Could be a chance for Joe Cannon to maybe step up. Yeah,
and I think I was talking to you one time on the sideline about that and looking at the makeup of the coaching staff and having, Marius and Carl and Paul Ritchie. Like, to me, that's a good, you need that, maybe another guy to play the role that Carl played last year to come in and fill that role. But to me, that's the sort of makeup of a leadership team that I want on there, guys taking down air marshalling and stuff like that, right? Marius and the airplane. I want guys that are leaders. I want someone to stand up in front of the mic and say, that was a terrible performance and we got to be better. Not any kind of spin or and I think that's why Carl, when we hear Nigel or Jay or Russell, Camilo, all these guys talking about the respect they have for Carl, I think that's a side-handed swipe at Rennie, right? You know.
Yeah.
I think it's also you have to show support for a new coach as well. One
that
that was
sincere though.
One of that I was very happy to see was Ben Fisk tweeting out saying that he's excited to for Carl Robinson to be the coach, because maybe there is a connection, because maybe he worked with Ben Fisk a little bit more. Maybe we see a contract signed.
Well, we saw that at Burnaby Lake, right? We saw Carl with the young guys afterwards when everybody was leaving and whatnot, and he'd be out there working on left foot, being 2-footed players, stuff like that, So I'm sure he has that rapport with all of them.
Yeah, I'd bet my house now that Ben Fisk gets signed.
Yeah.
I don't own my house, so it's a safe bet.
Yeah, I'll bet your house too then, but I would think so too.
Yeah.
Final thing we just mentioned about Carl before we move on to our year review is, do you think he's going to be left alone to see how he copes, or do you think they're going to look to bring in a director of football above him, someone that's had experience of MLS, someone that's a little bit older, and somebody that doesn't have any interest in becoming the head coach?
That's the key. That's the key right there.
It's a big question, eh? Well, I think they have to do that, right? Like, even having a situation where even if they hired Yallop and said, you got to keep Robinson because we want him to be the next head coach, right off the bat, I think in the last podcast, Zach was mentioning Dennis Hamlin, with Teeter, right? So it's like,
he was basically Tom Sowen guy.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I think really this is the best case scenario that we've ended up with Robinson, and you got to let him now build his staff without any say, right?
Or bring Tommy back. Because I've got so many more hot dog gags that I'm just like, I'd love to get them out.
I think there would be a massive uprising if Tommy Sowen was brought back, especially by the hardcore people.
I never had just random players that you have, you just see once in a while at training or whatnot have such negative things to say about a guy. So you just have to know it's just can't happen.
Like, I guarantee you, if Tommy Sowen comes back, he will not be seeing West Knight tweeting out congratulations.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Carl Robinson's appointment will be discussed even more when we do our 2014 year review, but for now it's time for our 2013 year in review. So let's kick off with a look at January and February.
We're entering January, February, as the song went. And that song was by Barbara Dixon.
Yes,
Barbara.
A good Fife girl.
So we'll talk about some of the additions that we saw and subtractions, obviously. I think obviously one of the biggest subtractions in the off-season before the opening kick was Barry Robson, a very volatile Scottish fellow.
I miss him. I actually think, like, in all seriousness, he could have done a really good job for the Whitecaps. They needed somebody with his passion, with his aggressive play and his control in the ball in the midfield, and that's not what they got from other players in there. There's a few negatives. He shouts at Bobby and a few, well, maybe every single other person on the planet, but I think the Caps missed him.
Well, that's exactly what you think, shouts at Bobby. That's basically what the final straw was in him leaving, right? He kind of had it out with Bobby Lenarduzzi, or so we heard. So, Steve, what do you think of Barry Robson?
Well, I agree with Michael to an extent that as far as his actual skill on the pitch and what he brought on the pitch, they could have used for sure. But I just think the negative he brought and the tension and all that sort of stuff that appeared on the pitch when he arrived, it just wasn't worth it.
Do you think he would have stayed if he didn't have it out with Bobby or Lenarduzzi, or do you think it was inevitable that he was going to be leaving?
Well, we don't know 100% that he had.
Well, a lot of people. We've heard it from a lot of people.
Well, we've had a lot of things this year.
Things said too, right? The other people, retirement decisions based on things and that sort of stuff as well, right?
But he was described by Brad Knighton as the angriest person he'd ever met. Brad came close after losing the starting spot, but I'm sure we'll come to that when we get to that later in the year. But I don't know. I think he wasn't a good fit for MLS, and you're going to find that with a lot of the Scottish and the English players. And I think that's why down the road the Whitecaps need to look more to South American players and people that can't speak English and they can't shout abuse at folk.
Well, look at Nigel, though, right? I mean,
well, he was
Nigel fit in quite well, right? And he had the same sort of style as far as the getting upset or whatever, but had just a different way about it.
Yeah, he wasn't as demonstrative on the field, and he came in February, obviously, as we know. And essentially, he was the one that replaced Barry Robson at a lower ticket because he wasn't a deep designated player. But yeah, Nigel came over as well. That was probably one of the bigger additions of the off season.
I like Nigel. I think the thing was understanding the type of player he was coming in, right? I think if you were an MLS fan and not necessarily a football fan in general, you might think someone coming from EPL is going to be your 20 goal scorer or something, right? Because the perception is, a lower league or that sort of thing. But I think Nigel brought exactly what I would have expected him to bring, knowing the type of player he is. So I was happy with it. I thought in my head I had him for 5 goals. I thought MLS, he'd probably get 4 or 5 goals.
Well, he could have if he could have finished.
He could have, yeah. But that you could say that in EPL too.
Yeah.
What I mean? That's the way he plays. That's not what he brings to the field, right?
No. I mean, going forward, where do you see his best position now going into next year?
Yeah, that's tough because that's going to come down to Carl, right? I mean, is he
And
going
the
to do a
formation he
4-4-2 or is he going to do because I wanted all year, I wanted Gersh and Nigel to play in a 4-2-3-1, right? And I would have liked to see that. And then you could see like Jay and Johnny Leveron playing together in the center back and not having to worry so much about that center of the pitch, right?
You could go 3-5-2 and then we don't even have to worry about getting a right back.
But there's lots of options, and I think there's still lots of options because we have open spaces, right? So,
well, he says he wants to play attacking. You have to think: how much he was a defensive midfielder?
Who said he wants to play attacking?
Carl does.
Carl, yeah. He wants his style.
His style. He wants to play attacking. No, he hasn't said what he wants to do with Nigel, or even, of course, if Nigel has resigned, which he has.
Yeah.
But Nigel has spoken on Whitecaps' website recently that he does approve of the Carl Robinson signing.
And I think he said himself he prefers to play a more aggressive role. Yeah. Actually, he'd probably prefer to play anywhere apart from right back.
Yeah, and my biased concern with that is that's I can see him taking lots of minutes from Gersh, right?
Yeah.
That's my concern, and I shouldn't even say concern because really it's just unbiased because we got to see Gersh in his rookie year and all that.
I know you're cheering for the Canadian.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But
Canadian.
If the rumours, which I don't know where they came from, possibly Monday's podcast by us, are true, and he is on something like 400,000 next year, do you feel he's worth that in the grand scheme of MLS salary?
Yeah, because he brings variables to the field, and he brings a passion to the field from somebody who's grown up with that as the only sport. He's not somebody who played basketball and lacrosse and tennis in high school. He's a soccer player through and through, right? And I think that comes across when he's on the field, and you see that with Camilo and with Russell and the other guys around him, right? When we talk about Sam's game, and having the guys around him that he had around him and the game that Sam had, that speaks, I think, volumes to the players that were around him in that match. So I think in that sense he's worth the money.
Another couple of players that we should maybe talk about more if you want to, maybe not. Martin Rennie dipped into Carolina a couple times again and brought in Brad Russin and Tommy Heineman. Obviously going back to his roots and seeing what he could bring up from guys that were broken down and try to build them back into MLS players.
I never want to hear the phrase broken down again. So
it was so popular last year. And then obviously another big addition that maybe didn't work out like Nigel Reo-Coker worked out was Diego Kobayashi. They expected him to show, provide the flair in the midfield, be the number 10 or so behind the strikers.
And he joined in January, so he joined quite early. So he was obviously someone that Rennie had his eye on for a while. He was one of the first signings for the new season.
But he joined in January, but he was coming off an injury, so he wasn't put into the team right away. He was slowly integrated with the team. He was ready for first kick, obviously.
Great. Yeah.
Any thoughts on Kobayashi and where you thought he was he came in with a big splash. The video information from Japan and from Denmark, wherever he was before, looked good. It looked like he could provide some service. One thing I always thought was he showed him in those highlights that he was good on dead ball situations, corner kicks and free kicks, but he never got to actually do that in the team.
I just didn't see the necessary aggression and the attitude that I think you need to have in North American sports. As much as we talk about Nigel having the passion as a through and through soccer footballer, I think in North America there's a lot more of that hockey mentality, football mentality, right? Punch him in the mouth type stuff, and I just don't think he fit in with that. I don't think he had an ounce of that in him. So it's not the spot for him at MLS.
So the last player acquisition we'll mention for the pre-season, or acquisitions, is let's have a look at the drafts, the super draft, the supplemental draft, which is now thankfully a thing of the past. And of course, in the super draft, we picked the two speedsters, the very talented and highly rated Kekuta Manneh, and we also got Eric Hurtado as well. How do you think their first seasons in MLS went, Stephen?
Well, I'm always going to be biased on Hurtado because I went into it and he was, ranked like 40th or something, had a good weekend and shot up and, so I always please don't draft Hurtado. Please don't draft Hurtado. I wanted actually Manneh and Mikey Lopez, so it probably, Hurtado probably did better than Lopez, who didn't even see a minute in the MLS, but he was young, which I think, to me, if I'm going to go into the MLS draft, I'm going to take young guys.
Yeah, younger guys.
Yeah, and take them almost like as if they're residency players, right? So
there could be a few interesting ones this year, but that's for another show.
Yeah, Kekuta I think was fantastic, and I think they did a pretty good job bringing him along. I know there's some debate on whether he should have got more minutes or not, or that sort of stuff, but I don't think because he scored a lot of goals at the end of the season that necessarily means that he would have scored a ton if he played more minutes.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And
but we'll never know because he came on, when we'll talk about this later, he came on against Dallas and made a big difference. They were down 2-0 and he came back and got them back into the game.
Yeah.
But after that, he kind of disappeared for long stretches. The funny thing is a lot of people talking about that they traded up from 10 to 5 to get Kekuta Manneh. A lot of people said, they traded up to get Kekuta Manneh. I don't think so. They traded up actually to get Eric Hurtado, which makes it worse.
Well, I thought
because they would have drafted Kekuta at number 6 when their actual pick came up anyways. So it was actually they traded up to get Eric Hurtado, which is actually makes it worse because they gave up allocation money. They picked up a guy who was on a regular contract. That could have been valuable money that they used down the road to pick up a decent player, a veteran player.
Yeah, no, I thought Hurtado, he's wearing a Whitecap kit, and I hope he does well. But to me, it's like a guy, 4 years of university, and you're gonna base this whole thing on a weekend. Basically, right?
And I remember asking in the post draft conference if Martin Rennie had watched him play in the PDL because he was with the PDL Portland Timbers.
Yeah.
And he said no, we just based it on. Well, he said we looked at other things. He said it had nothing to do with the PDL. Michael, you were talking about during the season. I remember you were talking about Hurtado. There was a couple of games early where he just missed chances, and you were saying that if he had scored, that might have boosted his confidence. He might have been a bit different player.
I definitely think it is. I spoke to him. I think it was after the Chivas game where he had another near miss, and he was gutted, and we never ever ran the interview. I'll have to kind of dig it out, and we might splice it in somewhere in this, but we'll see. But he said he feels that all he needs is a goal, and if he gets that goal, you're going to see a different player. And I think it's just weighed on his mind so much.
He scored in reserves a couple, 2 or 3 years.
He started to. I saw him a couple of times in the reserves where I actually started to think he looked like he'd bulked up a bit, and I thought he was going to be a good player. I saw him down in the reserves at Portland in August, and he had a great game. And I thought this could be his breakthrough. He could maybe now be the player that we're looking for. But then you think maybe it was just because it was against Portland, and he was just wanting to show.
Yeah, and I think part of that is the frustration of, when you reach a certain level, and then the game's quicker and everything's quicker and it's moving faster and your touch needs to be that much better. And that's the thing for him, right? When you watch a ball come across a cross coming across to Russell, and how he takes it down and the ball is at his feet, right? And then you watch Eric and you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you're not expecting him to just receive the pass well, right? You think it's going to bounce somewhere, something's going to happen. And you can make up for that with a quick first step or with a quick reaction, but you can't as the levels get higher, right? And I think that's the difference from someone like Russell, who's really 7 years, 8 years in a professional environment now, right? Versus a 24-year-old guy going into his second year or third year if you count the year in the PDL, in a professional environment. And I just don't think you can't coach that at that point.
No. So a question for both of you, just regarding both players. Kekuta Mane, first of all, do you think he's going to see more time as a starter? Is he the guy that from the very first game against New York, he's going to be starting up front?
No, shouldn't be. Because if you got Kenny Miller and Camilo coming back, he should definitely not be a starter. But I see him being one of the first guys off the bench in a game and getting spot starts during the season. Because we all know Kenny Miller is a little injury prone. He's late in his career. He's not going to be able to play every game. So he could be a spot starter. But I don't see him being a starter right off the bat unless he completely blows off the preseason.
Well, if they go 4-4-2, I mean, there's no saying he can't play in the midfield in a wing position.
Possibly,
right?
Yeah.
We do need some wingers.
Yeah, and I have no evidence that he can, but I haven't seen any that he can't. So.
Well, maybe Carl will break him down in the off season and build him up as a winger, learning from Martin.
Hurtado needs to be broken down.
Well, my question to you both about Hurtado is he going to be a Whitecaps player next season? Do you think Robinson will keep him and give him another year, or do you think we'll dangle him to somebody as a trade?
Yeah, I don't think I think at the end of this season, this season will be his last regardless, I think, as a Whitecap player. I'm kind of surprised he's back as it is. But if they get something for him, I could see that happening.
It could be in a package, like give you package a couple of things together to get something else, you get that back. One thing I mentioned, and I mentioned it to, I can't remember who it was, somebody else in the media, like one of the, maybe, I can't remember who it was, besides the point. One of the media guys, and we were talking about Hurtado, and I was mentioning, does he have the capability of playing maybe right back? Maybe he could be completely broken down. We use that term again. And he maybe plays right back. He goes, he has the capability of playing it. He's got the size, he's got the speed and everything like that. He just needs to learn defensive side. So maybe there's a chance there. Maybe he gets one of the last spots on the roster. Maybe they could develop him into something else if they're not confident that he can play, but has the touch going forward.
I'd like to see him as a left back in the dressing room.
So we got the supplemental pick.
Stephen's favourite player.
He's going to break his
second favourite player. Adam Clement.
Yeah.
The start of the Adam Clement era. He was the only. They picked 6 guys. And
two of them from Notre Dame, the year that Notre Dame didn't win the national championship.
Yeah, and so
but
they only kept
salt in the wound. We have Derek Bassey's number 41 jersey hanging here in the room. Yeah.
Steve picked that up in the, whatever you call it, the Caps clearance sale.
Yeah.
He's never going to fit into it though, by the looks of it. Tall and thin, Derek Bassey. Steve, not so much.
So, next...
Moving on. Steve Smapty. Steve Smapty.
Maybe
I would clearly fit into it.
Yeah, but we should point out, Slamo, tall, male model in his past life.
Model, yes, absolutely.
And in a band, ladies. Yes. But he's taken.
One of the guys that were picked up just before the season started was Johnny Leveron. Slamo broke it before, broke the story that they were actually looking into Leveron.
He broke the story down.
Yes. And
broke it down. Yeah.
Broke it down.
Came up in my Google alerts.
So
look forward to Martin Rennie's new show on HBO, Breaking Down.
It could go in many different ways. Leveron, but unfortunately he was definitely out of shape. He couldn't, after playing training with him in Carolina, he couldn't actually come over because of visa issues. So that kind of slowed his process down, but overall, he was a pretty good pickup, I thought, for the money he was being paid. I was actually surprised that when the money came out, how much little he was getting paid.
Yeah, when I first saw the article in the Honduran newspaper, I started tweeting him like a madman. Come on, Johnny, come to Vancouver, you'll love it. I thought he was fantastic in the Olympics. In the Olympics, to me, he was like the standout, player of the tournament.
I actually do remember during the Olympics, you were tweeting who's this LeBron kid, and oh my God, he's going to be a great player. Yeah,
but I mean, I think it just shows Slamo's commitment to the cause that he reads Honduran newspapers on a daily basis to do scouting for the Whitecaps. It's just incredible.
Google alerts.
Oh, you've given the secret away now. Everyone's going to be doing that and breaking stories. Enough about the players that came in. Let's look at the games that were played. First of all, let's look at a game that was played in January. And the first game that the Whitecaps played pre-season was on January 29th, New England Revolution, 4-1 win, and a Darren Mattocks hat-trick in the first 15 minutes.
And it would look like the Darren Mattocks was going to actually explode onto the season.
Well, in his mind, he did, and he still has. But it did set the scene that you thought he was going to have a brilliant year.
Yeah.
What went wrong?
I don't know. We'll
touch on that later.
But the 3 goals were amazing because it was, like we said, first 15 minutes of the opening thing. I can't remember. I don't think there was a stream. We were following by Twitter or something like that. We saw the highlights afterwards. But it was a crazy start to the season for sure.
Yeah, it seemed that he was going to contend for the Golden Boot at that point, but
I think he possibly won the pre-season Golden Boot. He had 5 goals overall in the games, more than Camilo, who only scored 3, and all of them in the last game of the pre-season. So the other pre-season games, we won't list everything, but we had wins against Houston, the College of Charleston, an Arizona team that I can't pronounce.
Suharas.
Yep, Suharas. We beat Suharas, and then we culminated with a win against the Railhawks. Took part in the Charleston Cup. Challenge Cup, was it?
Carolina Challenge Cup.
That's it. I wrote down 3 C's. I didn't know what they stood for.
That's what I did too.
Yeah. So we won against the Battery, we lost against Houston, we drew against Chicago. I mean, from the pre-season games, what were your expectations going into the season?
Top 3 in the West for sure.
Yeah, me too. I thought with Colorado dropping RSL, maybe not looking as good. I thought Portland might not do it as quickly with the new coach and everything. I think they would be top 3 behind Seattle and LA.
Good, yeah.
I had us 4th or 5th, and I didn't have Portland making the playoffs, so clearly I know nothing, so people should stop reading and listening to this.
I think I had Colorado below Chivas USA.
But for next season's predictions, we're going to have Predict-a-Pooch predicting where people are going to finish in the conference, and what we're going to do is do that with numbered balls this time. No more treats, he's getting a bit fat. So that was our thoughts going into the season. The season kicked off in March, and we started with a home game against Toronto. So the season kicked off in March with first kick, and Toronto came to town.
An inspiring opening kick.
Yeah, but we weren't sure, of course, whether
they have 11 players.
Yeah, it's like it was very late in the day. They signed the alien Robert Earnshaw, who, of course, he might decide to move here because it's closer to Area 51 and his family. But yeah, 1-0 win. Jaden Merritt got injured.
Like 6 minutes into the game or something like that. It was really early in the game, and then they forced Brad Russin to make his debut.
But it wasn't all bad news. We won.
Yeah, but in a way, it wasn't a convincing win because we only won 1-0 against a team that was barely put together. And while nobody really pointed to it, it did show some weaknesses in the team. Of course, the Whitecaps were still, first game too, but when you're facing a team that's got, like you said, barely 11 players, we weren't sure who was going to play. Don't even know if they have enough keepers on the team. It was, looking back on it, it was kind of disturbing.
I mean, they played like Toronto, they played not bad. I was quite impressed with actually how they played, with the way that they'd been put together. First goal of the season from Gershon Kofi, and it was a win. And we followed it up a week later with our second home win against Columbus, 2-1. 2 out of 2. I was quite hopeful. I thought the season's going to go well.
Yeah, because at that point, Toronto, as bad as Toronto was, Columbus looked like an Eastern contender, right?
Yeah, because they defeated Chivas pretty badly the week before.
Well, and just their roster, you look, Columbus is one of those teams like us that it's like, how did they not make the playoffs in the East when you look at the roster they had, right?
But then we hit a really horrible, I think it was a 7-game stretch where we didn't even get a win. It started to go wrong with the 2-1 loss away to Houston.
And that's where, after that game, and in the game, obviously, we had a chance to take the win. But Mattocks had that, break on the goal, and he didn't finish, and he didn't set up Rio Coker. And after the game, that's where Rio Coker on the post-game radio show ripped into them. Basically, didn't name them by name, but said that we have to take our win, and when we need to finish, we need to take the win when we have it. And Houston came back and won that game 2-1.
Well, I mean, in Darren's mind, he scored a hat-trick that game, so, I mean, it was okay.
There was another ripping, too, during that month. I remember this, and I'm just going to mention this quickly. It has nothing to do with the MLS season. The reserves played against UBC. And they had a horrible performance where UBC totally dominated them. And I remember listening to Martin Rennie. It was the first time I heard Martin Rennie rip into the team on Pete Chad's Daily Show. And it was pretty. I thought maybe Martin Rennie wasn't going to be as positive as he was the year before, and maybe rip into the players a little bit more once in a while. You were at the game, right?
Yeah, it was total domination. It was really embarrassing. I was actually cheering on UBC. It was great to see because it was all local guys that were scoring. And I mean, we're talking about Toronto having all those players that they had just signed and they didn't know who they were going to have. The Whitecaps were playing like a team that had just met each other. And it's like, this is our future. These are the guys that's going to come in if we hit a bad spell. And you kind of thought then it's going to be a long season. Are they going to pull it all together? It was horrid. It was really, really bad. And
they did bounce back. The reserves did bounce back.
The reserve bounced back. The first team, the next week after Houston, of course, they lost 2-1 to Chivas.
And that was the game that, it was actually the first start for Camilo, which was hilarious considering how well he's done. He didn't get a start in the first 3 games.
I mean, how concerned, can you remember back to March, Stephen, how concerned were you after those 2 losses? Did you just think it was usual away blips? Or did you see the cracks starting to show?
Yeah, I think after the Chivas game it was starting to, you could see that there was something missing. And
especially on the back line.
Yeah, the depth of it, and there were things. I think sometimes you see a guy in your kit and you rate him, and I think Russin kind of falls into that category because I just don't have anything good to say about him. The ball would come to his feet and I would worry. You know,
he had a bad preseason. He made a lot of mistakes, and I didn't really rate him.
No.
Then when he came on early for Jay in that first game, I was like, oh, this isn't going to be good.
Yeah. He played decently in the first 2 games.
He did surprise me in quite a few games.
But the away games definitely were a worry. And I remember the Chivas goal, one of the goals in the Chivas game, Rochat, it seemed like had no faith in Russin and was totally playing to support him. And then the ball went over the entire length of the box, and then somebody popped it in. And that was kind of indicative of where everybody thought Russin was, especially his teammates.
And that's kind of went through that whole stretch in there. You could see that all the time where somebody else was thinking they had to cover for somebody, or there was a lot of that sort of stuff, right? Where there just wasn't that faith in each other, and you could see it.
A quick snippet before we wrap up the March is the return of Wes Knight to Vancouver. FC Edmonton had their training camp here, and we actually got to see Wes Knight score a goal, which was awesome.
Yeah, we had a good chat with Wes and with Colin Miller, and both of those guys were really happy that the season was starting. They had high hopes for Edmonton, and for both Colin Miller and for Wes, it really didn't go very well because Wes got injured really early and had to miss out. But yeah, that was tough. So before we wrap up March, I want to mention the Canadian men's national team. They played 2 games in March, one of them against Japan, and they scored their only goal that they scored all year in 13 games.
Former Whitecap Marcus Haber.
Yep. Still think it's crap, but there we go. He scored Canada's goal of the year. Didn't really have much of a competition, but there we go. So that was March. So we finished March with 2 losses, and it took us into April where things didn't really get that much better.
Under the April sun, under the April sun, under the April sky, under the April sun, under the April sky.
So we're moving into April now, and we've been joined by the 4th member of our podcast. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, from the beat combo known as Curva Collective, Zachary Meisenheimer.
Michael, how you doing?
I'll get your name right one of these times.
One of these days.
And if you hear any crackling or something like that, the snacks are here, so just be aware of if there's any crunching or anything like that. It's not just Zach eating, everybody's eating, but he brought the snacks.
Yeah, talking about jerseys that don't fit folk from earlier.
So before we get into April, forgot what month we're in. Before we get into April, we're talking to you for the first time after the Carl Robinson appointment. So in 30 seconds or less, what are your thoughts on Carl Robinson?
You know I can't.
There's no Mars bar.
You know I can't do 30 seconds.
I know. Go ahead. Quickly. No.
I guess all I'll say this time is that I'm happy that it's a person that we as supporters already know and already have respect for, and so that I think is the most important thing for me at the moment. And I also think he's a person who can get a job done. So we could talk about it more in greater detail another time, but that's my initial where I'm at.
So April, we started off first game in April, 1-1 draw against San Jose after those other 2 losses. And interesting enough, the San Jose game, when we scored the goal, San Jose was down 2 men. Not because people were sent off, because they voluntarily went off to tie their shoelaces or something like that.
Yeah, they were changing their boots, and I'd completely forgotten about that, which is crazy because all I remember from that game is Nigel Reo-Coker's tackle. That's the last thing that's in my head.
The horrid tackle.
I think it was
Sam Cronin. Yeah.
So that was a fantastic moment when the 2 idiots, for want of a better word, went off to change their boots and we tied it up. So it was an entertaining game, if nothing else. Yeah, if you were Frank Yallop, you'd be going nuts at your guys for doing that.
It was nice to see Corey poach a goal. Like you saw a little bit of it was one of the glimpses where you're like, wow, okay, maybe he will provide something to the team in MLS.
Well, it was kind of a lucky goal too, right?
Yeah,
it was sort of like a shot that missed, that kind of
yeah.
hit him in the foot and stuck a little bit, and then he put it through, right?
Yeah.
There was not a whole lot of great skill in that goal.
No.
But he finished.
It was something
it was a finish inside the 18, around the penalty spot-ish.
But again, I'm gonna full disclosure, I'm gonna be biased on every fringe player that's not a residency player, so
So around this time too, it came out that there was a certain love affair amongst the players, a couple players.
Oh, this is breaking story.
No, it's not breaking, because it was the love affair between Nigel Reo-Coker and Russell Tiber.
Yeah, it was good to see them getting on so well, and Russell taking under his wing. Might want to have a Bentley now when he gets a bit older, if his feet reach the pedals, and he doesn't wear flip-flops.
Oh, the flip-flops. The great thing about that, the great thing about the emergence of this is I think in life, mentorship is a great thing. It's so important, and something I know I personally, whether it was formal or informal, valued in my life, and in seasons of my life where I didn't have it, I felt the lackingness of it in my life. There was a big gap in my life, and I think it's the same for a footballer. Whether you're already a pro and an older pro's mentoring you, or you're a residency guy and someone's mentoring you. I think it's so amazing. It's such an awesome opportunity, and it was great to see that kind of naturally develop. And within the relationship between Russell and Nigel, but Nigel and other people. I know Smathy, you talked about Nigel as kind of being the Oprah of the team this year. You get a contract in Europe, and you get a contract in Europe, but there's some real value in that in the way in which he kind of just loved on our younger players.
Russell came here when? He's like 15? Was he 15 or was he
Something
16?
like that. No, 15,
Was he
16, somewhere
He
around
was
there.
in that age
Yeah.
anyway, so he's got a lot of like wandering, so it's good to have somebody to kind of, play that role, right? In soccer and in life.
For sure.
For real.
So the Whitecaps returned back to BC Place after a 3-week road trip, or what you want to call it. They weren't obviously on the road the whole 3 weeks, but they came back and forth to face RSL. And they played, they were kind of, if you think of it, they couldn't get any goals. They were almost close to getting beaten until Nat Borchers basically fell on the ball and gave us a penalty kick that Camilo converted late in the game. That was an interesting game, I thought.
Was that the one where the young guy struck from distance?
Garcia, yeah, and he lifted his shirt up.
Yeah, that was kind of touching because it was for his mom or whatever. But that was I just remember thinking it was a disappointing game. Different, obviously, type of disappointment to what happened in the other
Later,
match against RSL. But at the time, I remember it was sort of like a BC Place Fortress kind of mentality, and not like, hey, we're going to get a result. It was like, hey, we're going to win every game. And I remember feeling a real letdown that day when we ended up with a draw. Although it was somewhat fortunate the way we ended up getting the draw, but
Yeah.
And then so after that game, they had a home and home series against the Dallas,
the Dallas.
The Dallas, yeah.
FC Dallas, or whatever you want to call them.
That was sandwiched by Edmonton away.
Yes, but we'll talk about the Voyageurs Cup in a second here. But the home and home game, I found it interesting that it was kind of the telling stories of two young players in the draft. I remember the away game, Eric Hurtado came on the pitch, and that was where he had that big, really horrible touch, where he had like a break for the net. He touched the ball and it went 30 yards in front of him. And then they come back to home, and that in the next game where they were down 2-0 again, and Kakuta Mane came on the pitch, and he actually brought them back and changed the game. So it was kind of a telling of the two draft picks, essentially.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, Dallas away was just shockingly poor. So that's all I remember.
Well, they've always been poor there.
Yeah.
At least it was a reasonable lineup, unless unlike
reasonable
the next
lineup,
game.
but that was terrible.
Wasn't that
the
one of
worst game? That's the one where Martin said, "Oh, we didn't play too bad." It was like, what? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, to be fair though, Martin always said we didn't play too
That's
bad.
the worst game. I don't think I've ever seen, like, going back to the 86ers, I've never seen a display like that. It was brutal.
I think that was one of the games too where Martin did not feel very well about our fullbacks play.
Yeah.
I know the comment came after the
Yeah.
RSL away, but I think that
Yeah.
was one of the games where that was not. The coaching staff was not
Well,
impressed.
that's where you start to hear rumblings too. The difference with Elaine saying like we should be playing the way we play. That's where he talked about being Elaine. That is talked about. We have the skill now. It's not 2011. We have the skill now where we should be dictating the play home and away, right?
For sure.
So-
And one of the away games that they did actually do well in that month was the away game in Edmonton. That was the first leg of the Voyageurs Cup
Well, you
semifinals.
say we did well. It was
Yeah.
it was a
It was a
struggle.
win. It was a win. And that's where the Curvan and everybody went up to Edmonton.
The supporters did better then.
Yes.
Edmonton away these last 2 years in 2013 and 2012 has been so great for
Yeah.
supporters. Like
Yeah.
even though the numbers haven't been huge, they've just been so awesome. Yeah, we've taken twice. We've taken 2 vehicles. We've taken 6 and 8 people or whatever each year from our kind of movement, and then a bunch of Southsiders have been there, and then local Albertans from all over Alberta kind of come, and there's
The Whitecaps fans.
yeah. So they've been like 40 or 50 or 60 of us. I think 40 the first year, maybe 50 or 60 the second year.
Yeah.
And there's just that away road unity. But there's the supporters match. There's this year staying in a hostel, and
Yeah.
there's just something real special about it from the
It's
supporters.
great, yeah.
And then both years were not great. Like we did not play super well. Even the year before, won 2-0, was it, or 2-0
Yeah,
or whatever.
Yeah.
Inspiring.
It was great to have. Eric.
But it was great to have a road trip within Canada.
Oh yeah.
For a meaningful game. Not like you're going to Victoria to play the Victoria Lakes. I'm sorry, Lord Bob. But you're not going over to Victoria. You're going actually to a professional team and playing them in Canada.
Yeah.
Road trip. It's not sure it's a 12-hour road trip, but it's still.
Well,
It's a great road trip.
Yeah. The only thing I got
Especially when Slamo drives, because
Oh, yeah,
he
it's
drives
pedal
like
to
the
the
wind
metal,
blows.
yeah.
So
But the thing in the Edmonton match that surprised me is we never got another look at Lance Lang. I totally expected him to be on trial here in the next 2 weeks.
He was
after
very
that.
good
He was
in those
brilliant.
games. Yeah.
Edmonton can feel really, really aggrieved and unlucky. I mean, when we took the lead, 5 minutes in, Camilo scored, and then our back line just had real trouble handling Cox.
Yeah, he was very slippery, slipped through them very easily.
He's a big guy, and it's like
he found the cracks basically in the back line. He slipped through them so easily.
And players like Cox don't come around every.
One last thing about Edmonton, which I really appreciated, was I know the play maybe not have been stellar or whatever. It was great to see the joy of Tommy Heineman bundling in what was a winning goal, just to see how much it meant to him. Yeah. Which we saw obviously again later in the year, but it was him taking one of the opportunities that was given to him and really contributing to the team.
And I hope his coming out of the re-entry draft, taking himself out, means he's coming back, because I do think he can offer something next year as a depth forward.
Definitely for value as well.
Yeah, I like Tommy Heineman. My favorite thing about him is he was always on the losing end against the Chill when he played with St. Louis.
Oh, there we go. Ding, ding, ding. The 100 Chill reference.
So if you're playing the drinking game, that's one shot for Zach's appreciate comment and one shot for Slamo's Thunderbird Chill. I haven't mentioned East Fife yet. Oh, there I go. So there's a shot there for you as well.
So a couple of roster changes that happened in that month as well. It was interesting because it was the loaning out of some players to Charleston Battery of USL Pro. It was Ben Fisk, Bryce Alderson, Emmanuel Adjeti. I'm going to say his name. I'm not sure. So those guys went over to Charleston Battery. Obviously, mixed results for them because of the fact of injuries and everything. Bryce actually went a little bit later than the other two guys, but it was mixed results, I guess, on those two guys because of injuries.
But it's the way forward for the young guys. And if you listen to our last podcast, Bobby was talking about that they seem to be going to be expanding that relationship with Charleston. There's no plans in the foreseeable future for a Vancouver or lower mainland-based USL Pro team.
For them to own one. Yeah.
Am I the only one shocked and disappointed at
No,
that?
he just said they're not going to own it. It's still possible that somebody else comes in. That I've heard that there's going to be another ownership group that starts it themselves.
And maybe
I'm still shocked and disappointed at that.
Yeah,
well, I don't know.
They cut the women's program, so don't expect other things.
Yeah, but this is proper football.
And are you gonna lose fans, right? Are you gonna lose people? We're going off of the topic, but are we gonna lose people who travel in from the valley now, or are you just gonna go? I'll just go to the USL Pro in Langley or whatever?
I don't know if there's very many people from the valley coming in the Whitecaps.
I don't know.
No.
It's hard to party tractor down time.
Easy there.
So we can't wrap up April without mentioning the heroic performance by the Canadian men's under-17 team at the CONCACAF World Cup qualifiers. Finished third. Very big Whitecaps presence in the team. Some vital goals from the Whitecaps guys. Bustos scored in the semi-final loss against Panama, and Jordan Haynes, of course, scored the magnificent 119th minute equaliser that sent the game into penalties, and then scored a penalty in the 4-2 shootout win against Honduras.
And Carducci stood tall in that whole tournament. I thought Chow really raised some eyebrows.
Oh, he was
a lot of people
throughout.
There was quite a few people in the East that were asking who this guy Chow was and everything else. I remember that. So overall, a fantastic performance by all the guys that were there.
Grande Marco.
And that was April. So let's take a little break now from doing our year in review part 1 and move on to a new section that we're going to introduce on the podcast. Now, I don't know how familiar most of you will be with a TV show from the 70s called Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads. It was a UK sitcom. It was a sequel to the original Likely Lads show in the 60s. But it's a classic episode from 1973 in the first series of it, when the two main characters, Bob and Terry, are doing everything possible to avoid hearing the score of the Bulgaria-England game. The game was kicking off at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but it wasn't being shown until 10:20 that night on TV, because back in those days you didn't get live football on the TV. So they decided that they were going to go to all lengths to not hear the score, and one of the other characters were trying to spoil it and said, there's no way you're going to last until 10:20, and they had a bet. And the upshot of it all was basically they get to 10:20, they put the TV on, and turns out the game's postponed. So they haven't actually missed anything, and they've spent their whole day in churches, ducking out of hairdressers and into pubs just to try and avoid the score. So I just happened to be watching that episode again the other night, and it got me thinking, what extremes have you gone to avoid hearing football scores? So we're going to have a little chat about that now in a section we're calling Spoilers.
Spoilers. Spoilers. Spoilers.
So we all watch a lot of football, and sometimes that means we can't watch it live. You have to watch games on PVR, you have to try and avoid the scores so you don't find out something that's happened. So we put a little request out on Twitter just to kind of find out what lengths people went to avoid scores. Has anyone had some horrible score lines spoiled for them? So quickly go around the table first. Start with you, Zach. Is there certain scores in the games that you've tried to avoid? Have you had some spoiled for you? What's been your worst nightmare?
I can't think of a worse nightmare. Before the advent of the PVR, there were definitely times where, I did everything I could to avoid the internet and avoid radio and whatever kind of thing. The worst was there was like people I couldn't talk to, friends who supported the same club as me, who I couldn't talk to because I knew just from the intonation of their voice, whatever, that I would know, okay, we won, we lost, we draw, whatever, and so I would just avoid them. Like if I'd be like, I can't talk to you, don't text me, I don't want to know anything, like just kind of stay away. But since the advent of the PVR, I kind of like, it's not such a big deal anymore. And now with MLS Live, for example, it's like, okay, like there's not too much that I get bent out of shape for.
Stephen, any stories?
Would have been probably putting my old fridge and stove on Craigslist. When the old VCR in, what year in Real Madrid, Barcelona, 90s. It was 99, 2000? Whatever year it was. So it's like, at that time, it's like, in Canada, you didn't need to worry about too much, right? Put my fridge and stove free on the internet. It probably wasn't Craigslist at that time yet, but whatever internet thing was there. And then this guy, called, a woman actually called and said they'd pick it up. Came over, her husband was like this Latin or Spanish accent guy, right? And he sees like the soccer stuff or whatever, just blurts out, oh, did you see blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I've got on the VCR, I just got home, man, So that was probably my moment.
I don't care about the PVRs. I'm looking for the result right away. I don't really care about watching the game once it's on. It's either live or it's for me essentially it's either live, I watch it live, or I don't watch it at all. Or I'll forward through the game until I see the goal, watch it like 2 minutes of the goal, and then forward through the next goal. That's how I basically watch whenever I miss a game.
Yeah.
My biggest and most heartbreaking VCR one was the '99 Champions League final, where I got home from school or whatever, got the video, went into the basement, put it on, like whatever. It's like I was just crushed by the end of that.
Well, at least you watched the whole game. I turned it off after with like a minute to go in the 90th minute. I had to watch the rest of the game on a VCR. I was pissed. I was pissed off that they were going to lose it in the last minute or so. I just shut it off and then I watched it later. Luckily, it was recording at the same time.
I've had so many, like not a weekend goes by that I don't spoil the result of something I was going to watch, and usually my own fault because I don't stay offline enough. There's been times I've stayed offline like a whole Saturday and into Sunday because I just haven't caught up with games. I was listening to Whitecaps Daily, I think last season, and Pete Shad spoiled the result of the League 2 playoff semi-final, and I was furious and said to him about thanks for spoiling the game, and he's like, yeah, you're really special, aren't you? And it's like, I really spoiled the game for me. But some of the stories we had from Twitter, Brenton Walters, who he always says that this is his favourite Whitecaps podcast, at Cop Caps Offside on Twitter, said, my workmates ruined the 2002 World Cup final, which was between Brazil and Germany, in the work truck on the way to the job site. No PVR in sight. And another story from that World Cup, Nick Wellsy on Twitter, said, for World Cup 02, me and my dad avoided talking to people all day to watch the final. As we sat down, Our sister told us the score. He also said he's kept his phone turned off all day and muted the sound of other games, just not to risk the chance of finding out a score. And that's what really annoys me about NBC's coverage just now. I'm PVRing all these other games, and then it's like, oh, and the latest from Goodison Park is Everton's this, or they're flashing the scores up constantly. It drives me nuts, as does the little ticker tape along the bottom that's spoiling games from the morning for MLS games that I'm watching at night that I haven't seen. Stefan Eriksson, at @the_penguin on Twitter, says he's turned his phone off and stayed up till 1:30 in the morning to watch a Champions League final involving Manchester United. No sympathy for anyone that's a Manchester United fan, I'm afraid.
The great Satan of modern football.
Chris Withers sent us a hockey story, so we'll gloss over that. No, he was at Empire. Someone spoiled the score, but it was a hockey story. Taylor D.A. Stephen, TDA Stephen, says, I sometimes PVR a few games at once but don't have time to watch them all. His girlfriend does him a favour by going online, checking scores and answering questions to figure out the best of the lot to watch. And she's actually learning a lot about two-legged ties. Now, that is a girlfriend that's worth keeping. It's like, even if she wasn't pretty, I would keep her. And the final one from Neil Clammer, at Neil Clammer, says his buddy jokingly told him before the opening game this season that Whitecaps captain has broken his leg early on. He hadn't even seen the game, he was just bugging him. And then neither of them could believe it when they sat down and their mind was blown when Demerit went off injured. So that's our stories for that.
Spoilers. Spoilers. Spoilers.
So we're going to get back to our year in review now with the month of May.
We start off the month of May with the signing, and this was epic, of our family friend Aminu Abdallah to a MLS contract. And we move on. After qualifying for the final, our first match, league match, was away game in RSL where we lost 2-0. And this was the game where Rennie actually went off on the fullbacks and kind of ripped them for not, playing the way they want to play, or something to that effect, where he was saying maybe we need to bring in different fullbacks for away games.
Which coincided with 2 weeks previous,
with
where
Dallas.
Elaine saying we should play the same style home and away.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think Martin's comments were based on anything around us.
But there was...
No, I don't think there was any of that, really. No. I think the coaching staff saw some performances that they weren't pleased at. I don't think it had anything to do with his comments. I could be wrong, but...
Well, there's something in the air, right? People are talking through the media about each other. It's never a good...
No, well...
You don't know what's happening behind closed doors.
Well, what was happening behind closed doors was they said, we need to bring in a keeper, and the club said, the committee, football committee said, okay, you need to move that amount off the books. Alan's the man.
Well, they had to do it because they were up against the cap as well. So they had to send somebody off.
Yeah.
And they couldn't, because Cannon was a guaranteed contract. Unless somebody took him off, it wasn't going to be Cannon. And none of the other keepers paid enough to take him off and make a difference to that thing.
But that all happened in June, so let's talk about that then.
No, it didn't. It happened in May.
Well,
It started in May. We don't know about that.
No,
we don't know about that.
Oh no, we do. They all said it. David Ousted said my agent contacted me a month ago and said it all started in May.
Okay. So, but they did bounce back next game.
In some style as well.
They beat the Galaxy. And this is where the broken down Tybert finally got fixed up again and scored 2 goals.
The jigsaw man, we should
Yes.
call him.
Yes. And the funny thing is he didn't even start the game. I think it was Kobayashi that came off injured, and Tybert was substituted into the game, and he scored his 2 goals. Fantastic performance. It was an eye-opening one. What do you guys think about that game?
Well, of course, he also ran to the bench after scoring to celebrate.
And
with
Aural
Right past Rennie.
So So what do you guys think about that game? That was a huge game because it not only it was Tybert, but it was also against the LA
His
Galaxy.
mom was there.
His family was
family
involved,
was there.
Yeah.
which is pretty awesome.
The Galaxy was against the Galaxy. What do you guys think about that? That was a big game for them.
It was our first win in MLS against the Galaxy.
Yes.
Because of course we beat them in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what? Daigle came off in the 14th minute, which was kind of ironic. And Russell, I mean, showed well. He was out on the right that day, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, cutting into the left both times. Yeah.
Because Daigle started on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, again, it was like one of those moments where you're like, all the incredible investment,
Yeah.
all the incredible hard work, all that was put into our residency program
Yeah.
was paying off in the first team.
Which is funny because when you see those goals, and in my head I'm thinking back to watching him play in the reserve in the PDL and playing that exact role with Thomas. Thomas was coaching him, right?
Yes, I think so.
Thomas
Yeah.
Neidorf initially, yeah.
Yeah.
Thomas
So that's
Neidorf
what he
is
was
his
playing,
agent.
right? Is it really?
Yeah.
So and then, but that was also just another quick trivia fact. That was the last appearance by Joe Cannon in a game too, against the Galaxy. He actually didn't play another game after that, which was ironic because it was a 3-1 win.
Not in the first team, but I did get to see him play striker at Starfire. which was
Well, that's a
incredible.
different game.
I guess should we talk about that the next game, because the reason why there was all this conjecture over why he didn't start the next game. And
I believe he had a groin injury.
yeah, but they weren't talking about that.
No.
Right? That
They
was
still haven't officially talked about that.
yeah, because everyone else just thought he got dropped, but he didn't get dropped. It was a physical issue,
Yeah.
from what I hear.
Well, they went on from that game with a lot of momentum, and they traveled away to Montreal for the first leg of the Voyageurs Cup finals, and completely messed up with the lineup for some reason, and put in Alain Rochat at left wing. They put Brad Russin at defensive midfield, and I don't know what else. I think Nigel Rokoko played right back, so it was all over the place. Like and obviously also that game there was a pre-game speech by one of the people at this table.
Yeah, I enjoyed speaking to them. Oh no, I'm sorry.
Okay, so I disagree with you on the lineup. I mean, so
I'm still gonna say that was a weird lineup.
No. Weird is okay, but what you said it was a totally wrong lineup.
Yeah, they came away with a draw.
Yeah, I was
They
in.
could have gotten a win.
I was in the tunnel. I was in the whatever
I don't think
outside.
you said wrong.
I don't think I said wrong either.
No, you were really critical of the lineup.
I was in Stade Saputo outside the dressing room, and they're like, "Okay, just stay out of the way. We don't want the players to see that you're here." Blah 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 blah. And I was like, "Hey, Nathan, who's playing today?" And he shared the lineup, and yeah, like everyone else, my jaw kind of dropped, and I was like,
That's wrong.
And no, I did not say that was wrong. And he's like, we want Nigel to up against Romero, plus we want him there to connect with Russell on the right side, and we want to be solid defensively, essentially. And I do not think that playing Alain Rochat on the left side of midfield was a negative thing. In fact, he almost scored and could have won the game
Good
for us
point.
from that position.
Yeah.
And I actually thought it worked really well. It was very defensive, sure. But we probably created the two better chances in that game than Montreal, and got I mean, in hindsight, obviously it's meaningless, but at the time, what felt like, wow, like, this could be the thing that puts us over the edge. As long as we don't lose or tie at home, we'll be okay.
Yeah, that was never going to happen. You're really enthusiastic about the lineup. I'm starting to think it was actually you that picked the team as well as give the team talk. But you got a draw out of it, so full credit for that.
They returned back to Vancouver after that performance and played a rival, Portland Timbers, their first time they matched up again. And that was the game where we had the catch and shoot game.
Oh, yeah. It's like even better than Dwight Clark's catch for the 49ers. It's like it's going to be known as the catch from now on.
The catch heard round BC plays.
Yeah.
The crazy.
That's their year, man. That sums up their Portland's year, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how about
And that was also, by the way, also the first game that Camilo started up top as a striker, lone striker, up to, like without playing on the wing or anything like that. So that was
And
a pretty
scored
big
the opening goal.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember I enjoyed that day for a lot of reasons. One, we did some an entire West Curve Latifo with Southsiders and So it was one of the great things to use. So we used Martin Rennie's quote from the sights and sounds of the first kick, where he said, he was talking about Toronto, but he said, they'll take a defeat, but we must give it to them.
Yeah.
And as soon as he said that, like after that game, our people were like, we got to use that. And then we talked to Brett Bird in the South Side. He's like, so we're thinking about this quote, and we're like, oh yeah, it was just one of those things that, okay, who can we use again? Do we wait till we play Toronto again? But it was really an awesome thing. The sad thing for me was, or cool thing was, my son came to that game. So, of course, in the second half, he had to go to the bathroom. So it was like the first time in a long time I had to leave. So we're in the loo, and I couldn't tell what it was. I didn't know if it was a roar of the crowd or a groan of the crowd. I'm like, Kirk, let's go. So we finish, we walk out. I'm like, what happened? Did we score? And it was, I missed the handball around BC Place.
You're lucky.
Yeah, it was pretty frustrating to not win that match.
It was nice to get to boo him at the reserve game the next day, though. He was in the starting lineup last year, right?
Yeah, I think people kept calling for interference or
holding
or something, like calling the American football penalties.
For the whole...
I don't know Valencia's stats for the year, but in that away...
that was his only goal.
Okay, yeah, because the away reserve match after the Portland game in August, he started and was shocking.
Yeah.
That was the game where...
I was thinking that Hurtado was good.
That was, Hurtado played well. Aminu did the roulette in that game. And he had,
Well, he wasn't good at...
He had half a dozen to a dozen chances in front of a goal that he shanked wide or, put right at our keeper.
He's gone now, right?
Who?
Or he's not gone yet. They're just speculating he's gone,
And that game brought us to the end of May, I think. Nothing else to talk about.
There was no other game?
Nothing else to talk about.
Just our hearts all being ripped out.
Yeah, that was the final game of the Voyageurs Cup second leg.
If we don't talk about it, it didn't happen. We are actually Voyageurs Cup champions on away goals.
For myself, I never
tournament.
I love it, but it's so painful.
Always.
I personally never saw Montreal being presented with the award because I actually left as the final whistle blew, and I told Michael, I'm out of here. I'm gone. And so I left right away.
Because you were so frustrated.
I hated it. I couldn't take it.
Security guard, come, you gotta leave, boy.
I was like, I was writing the report for Prost America. I go, I'll finish this at home. I'm not doing it. I don't care about post game interviews. I don't care about talking to anybody at this point.
So you missed the painful. Another one of the painful part was all the. I want to say Italian Canadians. Which I hope that's not taken in a negative way, who were like basically cheering on Montreal when they got the cup and cheering on their Italian players like
Nesta.
It was kind of disturbing.
No, and it's unfortunate. I love Nesta, man. I thought he was so sucked that he signed with them, and then watching him walk off with that. And it was much more fun going to Stade Saputo and watching them play FC Dallas for sure.
Do you think we're ever going to win this trophy?
No.
Or are we jinxed?
We're done.
No, we will win the trophy.
Just withdraw from the competition.
We're getting knocked out in the first round.
There's 5 teams.
We're getting knocked out in the first round this year, man.
No, this year's going to be brutal.
I really wouldn't put money on us beating Ottawa Fury in the final at the moment. The way that things are going in this competition.
That's ridiculous. But Toronto for semifinals and potentially Montreal in the.
I have a feeling Drake's going to score against us in the second leg.
He's definitely wangling for a contract. Serious point now. After that game, I really wanted Martin Rennie gone, and I think he should have been gone. And if he had gone, I think it would have saved our season.
Okay, and I know we've talked about this before. Had we won, his contract would have been renewed. Or automatically renewed.
And I would have been happy with it.
Yeah, because we had a winning coach actually win something that isn't a Mickey Mouse Cup, which I, of course, saw presented in Florida.
Games coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the CONCACAF. And
assuming we were still in it by that point.
But the CONCACAF thing would have been like, you would have had more time for the young players to play a little bit more. It would have been a different part of the whole season.
I could have gone to Mexico and met some nice Mexican girls.
San Jose. No, we didn't play Mexico. San Jose. We would have San Jose and was it the Guatemalan or Honduran team?
I don't know.
It doesn't make a difference now.
Still make Mexican girls.
So a couple of small points. Well, let's get away from that game because I don't really want to talk about it anymore. It's a couple of small points. Salgado. That was the month where Salgado had to get a surgery again on his injured after again injuring his foot being on with the U20s. That
Should
was
just ban
disappointing.
any of our players playing for America.
Or Canada for Tybert being sick all the time after he comes back from these games.
Well, also, if we promote all these young guys, we're going to lose half our team to international duty at this rate.
Good point. And then another one, the PDL season kicked off in that month, a 2-1 win over Kitsap. That was an entertaining game. We got to scream at the fat keeper.
That was the old school.
That was the
best.
we got to yell at the fat keeper for
Yeah.
Kitsap. It was fun.
I don't think I was there the day, but I heard you guys
The
talking
guard came over and said that the Kitsap coach wanted us to simmer down on the fat bastard.
Sorry, on.
He didn't want us to yell
calling,
fat
was he calling the
bastard.
keeper that, or he said
No, we. And then also, the Mumford and Sons visited the camp. Who cares? Okay, let's go.
That was me. Yeah. Crap group, crap month.
Considering how horrible May was, June was, I think, was the complete opposite when it came to the Whitecaps results.
It's like almost a dream month.
It was.
Almost.
And a lot of people saying that it saved Reddy's job.
Yeah. And you don't know if he'd had a bad June, he might definitely have been out the door.
Yeah.
Lots of rumours were swirling that management had spoke to him and said he had a month to prove himself. And right away, first game, away to New York.
Everybody thought it was going to be a loss.
Yeah, attacking.
In fact, if I recall correctly, we recorded a podcast.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
We recorded a podcast where we talked about how it was disappointing loss to New York Red Bulls. We recorded it before the game. Just
Yeah.
as a
the
laugh.
Champions League, right?
Yeah. And then they ended up winning, so we had to scrap the whole thing. We were
Yeah.
just doing random comments about the Red
Was that at the
Bulls.
Alpine
Also-
Club? We recorded that?
No.
we'd done that sitting on benches up at UBC. After we'd watched it under 18s
So
play.
you had to chase a crow away.
Yeah.
So, that was a huge game. It was a surprising game.
It was an awesome game. My wife and I were there. There was a good, again, like, there was about 20 or so traveling supporters, some family members, and then Germany was playing the next day against the States at RFK, and so there was like a dozen to 15 German guys who said, "Hey, where are you from? Vancouver? Can we come stand with you?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." So there was another these dozen German guys from
Oh, so these Germans were there.
Genau.
Did you do your Zeke chant? Had to watch with your arm gestures.
We didn't do the win chant there, no. But I don't, not that I remember. But it was a great away day. It was fantastic, and people went out to Times Square after celebrating, and yeah, it was good times.
It was the kind of game that good teams win on the road, right?
For real.
That's what it was. And it gave you that hope,
And it was also the game where Harvey scored his first goal of the season. And
Greg Klazura scored.
Let's not forget Greg Klazura's debut.
Yes.
We, my wife and I walked to the ground kind of with his parents and his brother, and they're really great family, really nice people. And they
Appreciate them.
they sat in the lower section of the away supporters, and then at the end of the game, they went down and were pitch side with him and kind of
After he went off injured, right?
taking it all in. No, after the game was all over.
And so soon, right, almost a few days after, or I can't remember, it was a few days after, several days after, Martin Rennie decides to shake up the team a little bit. And that's where the trade happened that made Lord Bob and Emile Rochat go crazy. And become best friends, in fact.
How many goals did Rochat score?
In his time here, I think it was 5.
How many goals did Jordan Harvey score in his short period?
He scored 6, I think, total for it.
Well, there we go. I think proof beyond... You can't argue with figures and stats.
Because you want your left back to be your
leading
third
goal
leading goal scorer on your side. Yeah.
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Is that how they roll at East 5?
We don't really know what a goal is at East Fife. People know us as East Fife Nil. They think that's what our name is.
Now, we all know Rochat got traded, that's fine, and everybody has their opinions. You can listen to previous podcasts and say, you can hear all opinions. Now, the one thing we never really discussed was Alain Rochat was then later on sold to a team in Switzerland for a chunk of money.
And a chunk of Toblerone. Which I think that's what the Whitecaps got, was a chunk of Toblerone.
It seems like it. Did the Whitecaps do good business by not exploring options and even Because it seems like they didn't even talk to Rashad about this trade. It came as a big surprise. Wouldn't it have been better for them to say, listen, we're in a crunch, we're going to have to trade you off, and then maybe he could make a better decision. It would have probably left everything on better terms as well.
Yeah, you could. I think, you know, if it had been mentioned, and who knows, maybe it had, but you'd have to think like the agent had some connections. Yeah, no, I know. I'm just throwing that in there in case.
Zach's shaking his head for people that are listening to the podcast
Yeah.
and not watching it.
There was no conversations. We
The
know
news
it was a
channel
shock. It was ridiculous. But yeah, if you had talked about it beforehand, I'm sure he could have at that point decided, well, is this the league I want to be in? What do I want to do with my life? You know, he's 31.
His wife was 8 months
His
pregnant.
wife's 8 months pregnant. And they could have organized something with a team in Europe, right, and gotten that money themselves, which would have been the smart thing to do.
Yeah, there was no conversation.
No.
Like I think I might have said before on an earlier podcast, Alain's agent is Alain. So they never talked to his agent. It was all tied into getting a keeper. They didn't talk to him beforehand. They didn't ask him what was best. And so people want to harp on or go after or be negative about the football committee. A lot of the things that people are talking about are speculation or meaningless. That is one of the things you could say, this is a failing of the football committee, because they were the ones tasked with doing that. And they did a very poor job and made our club look very poor in how we do things.
Yeah.
And I appreciate some of those people on there and stuff and whatever, but that was an incredible failure of our club. They didn't talk to him because that's not how they do business. Another failing we could talk about another time. And so they just said, okay, we need to make this happen. Let's just do this first thing, whatever comes up, whatever. They never said boo to him, but they should have known, because when they signed him, their family, they told them, they said, we are coming to Canada for this experience.
Yeah.
We want to raise our kids in Canada. We want our family to have this experience together, to learn English.
Yeah.
And they should have. It should have been obvious. I have talked to people who were involved with the deal who said it was extremely difficult, and who have, in a way, reconciled with the Rochat family after things have happened, after they went back to Switzerland and stuff.
So Martin Rennie then?
No, because Martin Rennie wasn't the one who did the deal necessary. I don't believe.
Oh.
It was the one who did the more stuff. I think was the football committee who said what's going to go, and
We need this money. This is where it's going to come from.
Yeah. And so I think Martin and the coaching staff said, okay, we need this money. This player, we're not super impressed with his performances this year, and so I think they were involved in that part of the decision making. But and another thing is, I know people get on Mrs. Rochat for the way she has expressed herself.
Well, I think she's awesome on Twitter.
Totally.
She's fantastic.
Okay, well, maybe we were being sarcastic before, but no, like she is a great woman.
Oh, sure.
Who's passionate about her family, passionate about her husband, passionate about raising her kids well and stuff, like any parent is. And I mean, I can't imagine if my employer said, "Hey, we're shipping you across to another country and whatever," without saying boo to you beforehand.
And I totally agree with her. I'm glad she did
Oh, yeah.
go after the Whitecaps. She didn't sit
Some
back.
people think she's not
well,
a very
that's
nice
their
person
problem.
for doing that, but yeah.
Well,
A great family.
Great fans. And the trade actually came to bite them very soon after, almost the next game, because they played the Sounders away, leading 2-1, and
on two incredible goals, on two headed goals from Camille, including a diving header.
Set up by Tybert.
Russell Tybert's right foot
Yeah.
and his left foot from a free kick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the start of Tybert just lighting it up during that month. He was just outstanding in that game.
And so Brian got injured leading in the game, and then instead of having Rochat maybe to come off
Possibly
the
our
bench
worst back line ever at that moment.
after he got injured.
Yeah,
Seriously.
yeah.
Because
Think back to like ever.
'Cause we have to mention who came on.
Since 74. Can you think of a worst back four on the pitch ever? A-League, CSL,
PDL.
PDL
PDL,
16.
U18, pre-res.
Because
So in your time-
Kozura came on.
Kazura went to left back. Harvey went to
Or went
center
to
back
center
next
back.
to, was it Mitch?
Leveron.
No, Leveron. Was it Leveron?
Yeah.
Was Johnny on? Oh, was Johnny?
Yeah.
And Lee was at right back.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Here's one thing that
And YP was
The worst
retired
left
at-
side of the back line ever.
Well, no, because even YP was starting his retirement in July, right? Around that time, June, July, he was starting his retirement. Come on, let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
But here's the
The
thing.
Colorado goal is the worst piece of defending in the history of MLS.
The what goal?
The Colorado goal.
Which will
Oh,
happen in
we're getting
September.
that.
Off the goal.
Yeah.
The worst piece of defending in the history of MLS that was.
I thought you said football ever. No. The thing that people
in now? October?
the thing that doesn't get commented on
Feels
about,
like
about
it.
that much, and I know it's not an excuse, and I know whatever, but Jordan Harvey has played center back for the Whitecaps in reserve games before. Yes, he has.
I thought he hadn't.
So did Tommy
In reserve
Heineman.
games, though.
It looked like he had.
So did Tommy Heineman.
Yes, so did Tom Hyman. Because after that they put him there because they were like, hey, if an emergency, do we need this? Let's put him there and
Yeah.
see how, if that's it.
And that happened in June actually as well.
Yeah, twice, right?
That was
Two halves. they
Just to
played
get
him
it
in.
back to the topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a heartbreaking day.
Yeah.
There was a silver lining in that injury as well because it brought back the return of Carlisle Mitchell, who returned back from Edmonton after
Played
Colin
well, yeah.
Miller had said that he was the best defender in NASL.
Yeah.
So, he came back. His first start was against the New England Revolution, which was one of the craziest games I think
Yeah,
all
fantastic.
season.
Fantastic.
Back and forth game.
Very lucky to get the win.
Yes, but it was. I think it still was well deserved. Some great goals by Kenny Miller. Kenny Miller was really good in that game. They looked miserable to start the game. Looked horrible defending once again.
Yeah, 2 goals down in the first 20 minutes.
Jordan Harvey, don't know what he was doing on one of those goals, but they rebounded back.
Dodgy penalty.
Still a penalty. Still
It's
called.
not a penalty when you trip yourself up in the box, which is basically what Miller did.
That's called skill.
Oh no, he caught the back of his
Yeah, he
heel.
Yeah, I think
I'm
so, too.
still not sure.
The bounce goal was good. Take a bounce.
The thing is,
yeah.
you catch the back of the heel, and then on the downswing, you hit the turf, you go down, right?
Yeah.
You know. That
But
was-
they won the game.
It was a good.
It was a good way to rebound from that disappointing Seattle game.
2 fantastic goals from Kenny.
Yeah. Carlisle Mitchell was also not even fully fit for that.
Yes,
game.
ankle was injured.
He was,
Yeah.
Another goal from Jordan Harvey.
Yeah.
I don't think Rashad would have got that goal
No.
myself.
set up by Russell, of course.
And then also there was the Mane stomp on that one where he stomped on Shuttleworth.
What did he really stomp?
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
He got suspended for that. It was barely a grazing and they suspended it for him. Obviously,
No,
all
it
sarcasm.
was 20 feet from us, or I don't know how far is it, 30 feet, 40 feet, whatever it is.
That was
It was
nonsense.
intentional little knock. It was, and I don't even mind that because you're 18,
I like
you're
that.
full of testosterone. Give him a little, make it look good. He tried to make it look good.
Yeah.
Right?
So the Caps came back again the next week. They played Chivas USA. That's when all the goat's blood was being spilt all over the place.
Yeah.
And
Another goal from Jordan Harvey, showing just how valuable a left back he is.
and he actually scored the 10,000th MLS
Yeah.
goal in that game.
Which made me feel better because I remember it was at first kick, MLS first kick
Giro.
when Giro got the 8,000th.
And made it like all about him.
Yeah.
Like he scored all 8,000.
Yeah.
Hey, who knows if Dero had joined the Whitecaps, maybe he would have got the 10,000th goal.
Yeah.
So the Caps obviously beat Chivas USA 3-1 in that game. It was another comeback as well. And this was where, at that point, Tybert had, I think Tybert had 6 assists in 4 games, which was fantastic.
Tybert, Camillo, and Miller, they were
on fire out there. That was the threesome up top, yeah. Their final game in the month of June was an away win. They continued their winning streak after that Seattle loss. Win in DC against United. It was another. It was actually this was probably a right penalty call against Matt Watson.
Watson.
Yeah, it was, and they converted that.
Good
it
on
wasn't.
Matty.
It wasn't an inspiring game, but they did enough to win the game in away territory.
That was the inspiring thing, was that it was an away performance with an away result. And it
Yes.
was like, okay, it was a penalty kick. It was 1-0. It wasn't super pretty. But we got the job
What
done.
was DC at like 7 points at that point? In the
They
year?
were horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, Whitecaps played like my ex-girlfriend Claire. Wasn't pretty, got the job done.
So a couple of minor points about that month we want to talk about. It was actually the first appearance of Jay Demerit at training after his what we thought was going to be a season-ending injury.
Career ending.
Well, some people saw career-ending. It was also the residency playoff week. They were able to advance, even though they were kind of being pigeonholed into by USDA to collapse in those games. They were putting against different opponents every 2 seconds.
Reached finals week back to back.
We'll come to finals week in July, and it was their one of their trophies that they won that year. It didn't make up for the Voyageurs Cup, but it was still a plate. It was the Juan de Fuca plate, thanks to a double save by Marco Carducci.
AFTN
No, you
save
can't
of the
even
year.
call that a double save. It's got to have its own name.
It's a Carducci.
Yeah.
Carducci.
That was amazing.
Marco Carducci.
I asked him right after the game when I was talking, and I asked him, like, what was going through your head? He's like, oh, no, I just saw things that moved around. It's like, holy moly, man. I saw the guy there. It was like, wow.
I keep meaning to ask the Caps if they have video of that, just like because they film all the games, they must have something.
They don't know. Stuff was being videoed that day.
I don't know.
It's never been released
Yeah.
if it has been.
Because they were it was an intern who didn't turn it on properly.
Like, did anyone there not see the second shot going in? Like, let alone the first.
It's clearly going.
After the first save, when the ball settled again, you're like, did anyone think there was any hope at that moment?
No. And it looked like it was going to be
incredible.
lost, too. That basically saved them because it was a 1-1 draw. They won on basically goal differential over the series.
Yeah.
From losing on away goals to winning on goal differential.
The biggest offseason story of June was the signing of David Ousted. That happened on June 20th, officially. Coincidentally, less than a month before, Martin Rennie had given a vote of confidence to Brad Knighton.
Well, he still gave him a vote of confidence because he played in July, which we'll look
talk
at in the
about
next.
soon. But it was just funny that they were saying Brad Knighton just needs to keep doing the thing he's doing, and then all of a sudden, while they're working at the same time, working on bringing another keeper in, who was definitely going to be the starter because of the money they were paying him and the fact that they traded Rochelle to get him.
Oh, I mean, they were bringing in a keeper because they felt that the keepers they had were okay, but not as good as they'd like them to be.
Yeah.
And in terms of what they were saying publicly and privately, was no different than what they would have said if they were bringing in a keeper or not. It fit with their philosophy of like, let's build the players up, let's make them confident, and let's work on their deficiencies, but do everything we can to fill their buckets, as they would say.
But I mean, Brad is one of those guys who's just, it's you overrate the guys in your own kit, right? Mm-hmm. We'll see him in New England and we'll wonder how we ever thought he was that good if he ever plays.
He's going to play, I think.
Wow.
So that's June. That's the first part of the podcast. Year of review all wrapped up. So that's it for this episode of There's Still Time. We'll just quickly go around the table and tell everyone where they can find you online. Stephen?
Slamo on Twitter at SSSLAMO.
Steve at Whitecaps Beat.
Zachary Adam Meisenheimer is Zachary AM on Twitter. Oh, and the movement is Curva Collective.
Send us an email at aftncanada@hotmail.com or send us a tweet at AFTN Canada on Twitter. And you can read all our stuff on AFTN at aftn.ca on Canadian soccer news. So until next time, which is going to be a special Christmas show, going to have some outtakes. It's going to be a little bit X-rated, so if you're of a sensitive disposition, you're not going to want to listen to that. And we're also going to have some special music featured in the show as well. So until next time, thanks for listening, and mon the Caps.
One day I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back. Until then, there must be no regrets, no tears, no anxieties. Just go forward in all your beliefs and prove to me that I am not mistaken in mine.